Alright, in this video we are going to make a cartoon plant pea shooter as the one shown here in Autodesk Maya. We'll be bringing this image in as a reference image, an image plane, and talking about image planes and setting projects and creating projects in this video. So in Maya, when you open up Maya, it's important to know that if you're just doing single scene files, that you can do that just fine. And as you're practicing things and doing things, it's perfectly fine to have a scene. But anytime that you start bringing other files into your associated projects, I keep using that term, and you start using them in conjunction with your Maya scenes, you might want to consider making a project. This lets the program keep track of certain assets that the scenes will use, such as textures and image planes, which we'll be bringing into this project. So to create a project, it's pretty simple in Maya. All you have to do is go up to the word File in the top left of your program and go to Project Window. So File, Project Window, and you click on this, Create a Project, and it will bring up whatever current project is selected. Most likely, if you haven't done this before, it's going to say default, and it's going to go to a certain location. And again, if you haven't done this before, it's probably going to go to some sort of documents area on your computer somewhere. To make something new, you just can click on New, and again, there you go. You can see now I can come in here and I can edit this field. Maybe I'll rename this to something like Cartoon Plants, and spaces should be fine. And then you want to give it a location. The location doesn't really matter wherever you want to save them. I don't recommend you work off a thumb drive, um, but a secondary hard drive would be fine, or your primary hard drive in a different location, that should also be fine. So all you have to do is click on the little folder icon and choose a location. I actually keep it in the default location on the stuff I do. For the purposes of this exercise, I'm just going to put it on the desktop so I can easily show you this being saved out. So I'm going to click Select. I'm just going to use Desktop, hit Select, and then I'm going to go ahead and click Accept. All these other things here, you can rename these. I just don't recommend that you do. The default names are just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and rename these. Or sorry, see these names alone and hit Accept. And what that has done is on wherever you told it to, it's going to create a folder or a series of folders that Maya will reference when it needs things. So all your scenes will get saved in the scenes folder when you start saving the scenes. Every image that you bring into Maya will go to the source images folder, and every image by default you export out from Maya, i.e. saved renders, will want to try to go to the images folder. So this image that I downloaded off the internet of the pea shooter reference here, I'm going to drag this right now straight into the source images folder, because that's where the first place Maya is going to look when you try to reference an image. So I put that in the source image folder, and this is ready to go. So close that, go back to Maya. Now, important to know about projects is it should have automatically set the project as soon as you created a new one. But why you use projects is because whenever you switch computers, or let's say you hand this off to someone else, it's like handing a briefcase with a folder dividers of those files. So whenever you receive a project, or if you switch projects on your computer, you're going to save multiple projects. You don't need a new project for every save of a single project. In fact, you can have multiple scenes in that project. But it's like if you're making a cartoon plant today, and maybe you're working on a post-apocalypse car and on another project, you probably have a different project for that. And if anytime you switch between those projects, you need to set a project. And to do that, you open up Maya, as you've done here. You can technically open up the scene already with not setting the scene, and it might be fine. But even if after you've opened it up, I'd recommend setting the project and just reopening it if that was the case. So I'm going to go to File, Set Project. You only need to do this once whenever you switch projects. Go to Set Project. And again, mine's probably already set to it, but I'm going to go ahead and scroll over to Cartoon Plants, which is what I named my project. And you're going to click on Set on whatever that name is. Whatever you gave that name, that's what you're setting on. A common mistake people do is they'll click in and they'll go into the scenes folder and try to open it like a file. No, you don't do that. Whatever you named it, that whatever you give that project, that's the folder you're clicking on. And you're going to click Set. And there we go. The project is now set. So now anytime I try to open something, save something, or import something, it's going to go into the projects folders to look for those projects first, that stuff first. So if I do a file save scene, for example, save scene as, it immediately, in this case, let's go to the desktop, cartoon plants, which is that root folder, scenes folder. And I can call this, I'll just call this pea shooter 01. And I hit OK, hit continue. If I go and look, just again to reinforce this, scenes, pea shooter 01. So it's always trying to save things into those folders as you go. Okay, so project's saved up, it's set. We've saved our first scene, which is you can save as many of these as you want inside a project. And now let's talk about bringing in image planes into this scene. And we'll talk about layers and then we'll wrap up this video. So image planes are reference materials that are textures that you can bring into your scene. Now the pea shooter I got was okay. Generally you want to find orthographic views as much as possible, i.e. straight from down from the top, straight from the front, straight from the side. Cars are really easy to find orthographic views on. If you Google orthographic cars, you can totally find multiple views of them, and you can break them up using a program like Photoshop, cut them up, and have 3 different views in your scene. You typically don't bring in perspective or strange angle things like the one I'm bringing in. It's a slightly perspective to it, but you can. And you can choose wherever you bring it into, and it's per camera. So on this case, I'm going to bring this view into the front view, and I'm going to navigate to this view. I'm going to tap the space bar to maximize this view. I'm going to go up to view of that camera, because remember, every camera has its own panel up here with views in it. Go to view in the front view, and that's just because that's the view I'm choosing for my image plane. Go down to image plane, import image. And again, where it's going to want to look right off the bat is it's going to go right to that source images folder. And again, I only have one image in here currently, and I call it pea shooter JPEG. So if I click on pea shooter JPEG, hit open, it's going to bring this image straight into the front view. If I tap the space bar to show you the 4 view once again, you can see it's in all your views. Now there is a lot of ways to edit everything in Maya, just same with image planes. Personally, I mean, you can come in here and change the height and width of the image in certain areas to get a precision, if precision matters to you. In this particular case, it doesn't matter to me that much. I'm just going to use the scale tool by selecting this image plane and grabbing the scale and I'm just going to bring it up. I'm not too worried about it. And then it's just arbitrary. I'm just kind of like, that looks good. And I'm going to move it up as well. That looks good. Bring it over like this. That looks good. So I just use the translate tool, the W key, and the R key to translate and scale respectively to get this where I wanted it. And again, I'm just positioning it in my case where the stem of this plant, pea shooter, is pretty much at the origin. But really, you can choose however you want to position this all you want. And again, back to the car example that we talked about. If you had multiples, you can bring them all in and position them, try to get them all to match, which would be great. So let's talk about a few default settings on here. I'm only going to go over the basic ones that you can do besides just moving and scaling this. I just move and scale it to get it in place. In fact, maybe I'll even move it back a little bit right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select the image plane and go into the attribute editor. The attribute editor. Remember, you can find the tabs on the right-hand side, or it's this little icon that looks like little tabs, I think, the best way to describe it, sliders up here in the top right area. It's the one right in the middle. The attribute editor has detailed information of anything you've selected, objects, in this case, image plane, all kinds of things. On the image plane, I'm only going to pay attention to like the first 5 here for this video. And these are all preferences that are up to you. Like I said, I have the way I like to work. I'm going to talk about them briefly, but if you don't like the way something does it, you don't have to use it, of course. It's not the right way. There's no right or wrong way here. These are just display preferences. So the first one I'm going to talk about here under display is the in all views and looking through camera. Right now the default is in all views. It means it shows this image in all 4 views. It's only a sliver in the top and in this case the side, but you can see it obviously in the front and in the perspective pretty well. Some people like to see it in all the views. I'm not personally not one of those. I prefer only to see the reference in the looking through the camera, which is the front, especially when I'm starting out. Now you can go back and turn this on and off, but definitely starting out, I tend to prefer to only see it in the front view. That's just me. Now, the display mode, there's a couple in here, but I only really bounce back and forth between two. There's RGB and RGBA. RGBA is the default. That means color, RGB channels, plus alpha. A is alpha. So if you bought it in a PNG with alpha, by default, Maya supports it. You can save a small fraction of memory if you set this to be RGB. And you can just save a little bit of memory. So I tend to do that because it comes from an error when the computer would actually run slower if you didn't do this. The next is color gain. Color gain property, what this does, moving down here and tapping the space bar to maximize this. What color gain property does is it takes the light values of the image and darkens them. And it focuses only on the lighter images. This is completely, your call. Like I tend to do a lot of hand drawing or drawing on paper or just, like sketches and stuff like that, or download, drawings, like line drawings. There tends to be a lot of white in there, which can be harsh on the eyes, especially in a darker environment. So if you're working indoors or at nighttime or whatever, it tends to be hard on the eyes. So I tend to tone this down a bit, so it's just not so hard on the eyes. So you can see I'm just dragging this slider and turning down the color gain. Color offset is the exact opposite. I don't use this one as much, but it does the exact opposite where it takes the darker colors and lightens them. Same thing. You can drag the slider, just drag it to the right. You can see it lightens those values. And again, these are just your calls. I'm just trying not to make it so overbearing that you can't see, because your model should be your focus. And your eyes are going to be drawn to the high contrast areas of the image, or at least hurt your eyes, if you look at it for long periods of time. So again, I tend to mess with the color gain and color offset just to kind of dull that down. Alpha gain is just straight up transparency. So generally I always reduce this. I try to just kind of do 0.5. Or if you want to, you can drag a slider back and forth. Again, totally your call. I'm going to do 0.5. And you can see we have this image now that is a little more grayed out, a little more subdued. It's there. It's obviously can be seen, and it's there for this one image. So those are the only properties I would honestly mess with in most cases for the image plane, and it's about as far as I'm going to go with this video. But again, you can change these however you like to make the image a little bit more easier for you to work with. So the next thing I'm going to talk about, this is something slightly different, is layers. Now, some people don't mind, and I'm one of them. I don't mind that you can select this image plane. It doesn't bother me. But some people don't want this to be selectable, and I can totally understand why, especially if you have like 3 or 4 of them in your scene, 3 image planes, that could get annoying. So what you can do is you can put these within a layer and turn it off so you cannot get them. So layers are found under the same place as channels. So in fact, if you look at the tab here, it does say channel box / layer editor. Click on that, or again, the graphic icon is the very top right one. I call this a stacks of paper. And there's your channel box with some abbreviated properties. A lot of those were found in the attribute editor. But below that, which we haven't talked about yet, is the layers. And by default, there is no layers in here at all. To create a layer, it's very simple. I go through the menus here. Layer, create empty layer. And you can see layer 1. And you can rename these later if you come into the thing and click on the attributes. But again, I'm not going to go down that path yet. But we've created a layer. And there's 2 properties in here that we will find useful. There's the visibility toggle, which is the little V, which you can turn this on and off, which doesn't do anything yet because I haven't added anything to the layer. And the far right one, which is empty right now, if you click on this, you can turn it to template and reference, which do 2 different things based on what kind of object it is. I'll talk about that in a second. Again, it's not doing anything because I have nothing in here. So let me go ahead and create another object here just to showcase layers a little bit more. I'm just going to create a sphere. Here we go. So here we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add both of these objects to this layer just so you can see them both at one time, what it does to an image plane as well as what it does to a 3D object. And you can easily select both things and add multiple things at once. So you can see, there we go. Just hold down Shift, grab both of those things. Or you can do one at a time. It's your fun. That's your call. And once you have them selected, I'm going to come over to Layers in the bottom right click, and go Add Selected Objects. Once those objects are selected, you can see it did add a little thing into the inputs, but that's okay. The best way to tell, in my opinion, is click on the little V, turn them on and off, and you can see now you can toggle the visibility of the whole layer, and you don't even have to have objects selected anymore. And you can see that it will turn those things on and off. They're still selectable. That's just a visibility. The other one, like I mentioned over here, on the right-hand side, turns on Template, which grays out 3D objects that you can no longer select, as well as image planes. And Reference keeps the object as it was as a 3D, but is also still not selectable. So that's what the difference between Reference and Template does. Template kind of grays it out and turns it to wireframe, where Reference just kind of leaves it there, but you can't select it. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to normal here. Select this one because I want to pull the sphere out. And if I want to pull the sphere out of the group, select the object, or any object in this case. Right click, remove selected object. Now you can see if I hit the V key again, the image plane disappears because I didn't pull that one out, but the sphere stays behind. I'm going to go ahead and delete the sphere because I'm done with this example. Turn back this on, and I'm going to go ahead and click this on Template R Reference. Should work for image planes. I did have problems with it in the past. Sometimes you'll lose the image. Technically, I think Reference is the correct answer for this. So I'll go ahead and put on Reference. But it does work on, should work on both. All right. So I can no longer select this. As of now, I have layers. I have my image plane all moved around. It's ready to go. So in the next video, we'll go ahead and start blocking in our model shapes and talking about some possible plans to model out this pea shooter.